I want to try to, I feel compelled to go further in Paragraph Aleph, and in the back of our mind, back of my mind anyways, is always the issue of, we brought off the difference between the Hasidim and the Gra. You don't want to hear me?
You don't need it.
So we said as follows. We said in Paragraph Aleph, "Va'adam hayasher ha'oved ha'amiti." What a magnificent paragraph. Ha'adam hayasher ha'oved amiti. Beautiful, right? Lo yafana datoi u'machshavtei be'es ha'avodasei lo yisparach. This is real instructions from a gadol hador. Lo yafana datoi u'machshavtei be'es ha'avodasei lo yisparach shemai. When I'm doing my avodah towards Hashem, you shouldn't let your mind wander. Even if the wandering, or if the tangent, or the kavanah here in my thinking is to do what's good for my tahara and what's good for my guf, ruchniistic things. Even if it's ruchnius, don't do it. You see, even though I said I'm not going to talk about it, I can't resist. Just as an example in history, like one of the big machlokes in history was with Rabbi Eger. I mentioned Rabbi Eger lived in Lublin, Hasidic Rebbe, Lubliner Rebbe. He was a grandson of Rabbi Eger, who was a misnagid, and he defected, and he became a chassid. And the chassidim loved the fact that he defected, and they, as a little bit of a shtach, they used to always call him label shloimas akivas. They used to, because his father was, they were miyachis him always to Rabbi Eger, to show that even Rabbi Eger came around. Rabbi Eger had a son, Rabbi Shlomo Eger, famous gadol hador. Rabbi Eger was a gadol of all the doros. He was magnificent, like the Gra. Rabbi Eger was like the Gra.
He's called Akiva
Shlomo label. Akiva Shlomo's label. Label Eger went to visit the Izbitcher Rebbe, and Izbitcher Rebbe seemed to be a puzzling personality, but somehow or another, whenever these big misnagdim passed through and they met Rabbi Eger, which is very counterintuitive, they became chassidim. You would think, okay, if you meet the Sfas Emes, like such a, like the same thing, or the Balatanya, like that was real seichel. But Rabbi Eger was not what we would consider logical. And somehow or another that attracted the masters of logic. So I would theorize that the pshat in that is that somehow they felt that there was a part of them that wasn't being satisfied. There was a part of their neshama which was not satiated by lamdas alone. So they saw something which was contrary to logic, and they saw such an avodas Hashem by the Izbitcher Rebbe, which everything you learn through the Mei HaShiloach of the Izbitcher, everything's upside down. Everything's upside down. Esav is the tzaddik, Yaakov is the rosh. Everything's upside down. And somehow or another, it appealed to their something, to their neshama. But anyways, this Rabbi Eger he was the Rebbe, but he was also the Moil of Lublin. The Rebbe, many of the Rebbes did the bris milah because of the kedusha shabbai, and his minhag was that he would do bris milah immediately after shkia, a few minutes after shkia. No matter what, it's nighttime, let's do the bris milah. It says in the Torah, "Vayashkem Avera L'shema." You have to do b'yom milah, so you have to do milah by day. He did it by night, and this was one of the became famous, and this was one of the the areas where the Misnagdim would point to that the Hasidim don't keep halacha. Reb Tzadok, who was a Talmud of the Izvitcher, and then Reb Leibel Eger, Reb Tzadok, and he was also a Misnagid that came over to the Hasidic side. He was not only a Misnagid, but he was a Nechet of the Gra. Reb Tzadok, Rabinovich, from the, I believe, from the Gra's third daughter, he was a Nechet. So he, a huge, I mean, it doesn't need my approbations here, but I mean, Gadol Hador in learning, Reb Tzadok. So he wrote a kuntris explaining and justifying the behavior of Reb Leibel Eger, why he does Mila at night. And he wrote such a kuntris, and it was sent out to all the Gedolei Lita at the time. The essence of his 10-page kuntris in very small print, it could be a sefer. It could be a sefer. The essence of it was that the hachana for a mitzvah has a din of the mitzvah, and since the hachana of the mitzvah has a din of a mitzvah, so he wasn't late. In other words, he started the hachana when he knew he had to do a bris. He started the hachana netzachama, and he was making himself with kavanas and tefillos and whatever he did to be making himself, and he wanted to be making himself as much as possible. So therefore, he would make the bris dafka as late as possible. And if you hold like Rabbeinu Tam, as late as possible means that as soon as you get into Ben Hashmashas, you're still there. So he was machmir to do a bris milah as late as possible, because that way he can get the more hachanas in than he would be able to get it anyways. And Reb Tzadok Tanya, that's brisay b'zmanai.
It's connected with the idea of saying Baruch Shem Har before Chatzos and then keeping on down.
Same thing. And he brings many rayas al pi halacha that it could be. Okay, but let's get serious. That's not the did. That's not the halacha. It's a justification for something, but it's a good example of what was then. Today, the Hasidim keep halacha, and the Misnagdim don't necessarily keep halacha. Like everything is all mixed up now. But at that time, this was like a finger pointing to the Hasidim at large, and it particularly bothered them because look, the master posek of almost all the generations was Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Rabbi Akiva Eiger is Sefer Yesod in halacha, and his grandsons are keeping halacha. So it was just as an example in history of, am I doing halacha or am I doing what I think is right? Notwithstanding Reb Tzadok's tshuva, am I doing halacha or am I doing what's better than halacha? Is there such a thing as better than halacha? Or don't be so smart, stop being a smart aleck. The Torah says, "Vayashkim Avram Boiker." Are you better than Avram Avinu? Vayashkim Avram Boiker, and he did bris milah. Where was his achadas? Reb Tzadok says, "Vayashkim Avram Boiker," as he started in the morning, but he finished at night. How do you know? Okay, so I just want to put that out there as background.
But it sounds from his lashon, the last few words, it sounds like what you have in a hineni muchan or l'shem yichud, those kind of tikuna alma or whatever. It sounds very much like that kind of lashon that you find that the Hasidim say.
Yes, that what? And that proves what?
Well, that's why I'm confused.
You're confused. Me too. Yeah. But I just want to be medayik. Ha'adam ha'yashar ha'oved amiti. Two qualifications here. Yashar. What's a yashar? Adam hayashar. That means if I'm thinking yashar, I'll just tell you what I think it means, and then we'll learn. I talk to people daily about their issues, their problems. You can bounce if you want to make a big decision. You can bounce it off me. Whatever people think it's worthwhile, come. But what I've realized the last few years, maybe everybody realizes is pshita, but what I realized the last few years is that when I have a job here, when listening to somebody, to try to filter out all the mishigas and get to the essence of the thing. So as an example, like if somebody says, I want to get divorced. Okay, why do you want to get divorced? Well, my husband doesn't get up for Shacharis on time. He's not hygienic enough. He doesn't learn with the kids in Shabbos. He doesn't blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I hear, let's try to be misogynist, but divorced? Divorced is a big move. Look what you're doing to this person, look what you're doing to yourself, or look what you're doing to the kids. And I start to dig, and I'm just telling you something I've come to, you start to dig, and is that really the reason? Is that really the reason? Is that really, and what it is very often, in the non-Jewish world, it's very simple. You could have 1,000 reasons why you want to get divorced, but really what it is you're having an affair with somebody else. Or in our community, Baruch Hashem, that doesn't happen too often. Happens to, but it doesn't happen too often. It's whatever, you don't like the guy. Let's just put it flush in general. You don't like him, so if you don't like him, say you don't like him. What I mean to say is that when I understand yashrus, and it's easier to do it when it's not for yourself. That's the inyan of speaking to somebody else, is that let's trace to akab. You have all kinds of reasons and all kinds of cheshbonos and all kinds of things. Is that really what's driving you? So the Adam Yashar is thinking 100% in Yiddish glatt. Yashar means glatt. Think glatt. And think glatt means to try, and this is a big avoda to do within ourselves also, to try to get rid of all the klipos and the layers of cognitive dissonance that surround and I'm using cognitive dissonance correctly, I think, because what happened, the way I understand this, you're a psychologist, there's a couple psychologists in the room here, but my understanding is, in music, if the leader plays one note off, so now the whole philharmonic goes one note off. And you have dissonance. That's what dissonance is. Dissonance is everyone's playing everything right, but it's just right, but wrong. Like something, like it doesn't have that gishmak. You can experience this sometimes during Keladin here in the shul. Somehow, everything becomes wrong. And if I have one nakuda in my mind, cognitively, which is wrong, what's going to do is it's going to shut my whole brain along with it. And I'm going to come up with all kinds of things. So this is not yasher. My understanding of yasher is, so you can be an oived amiti, yasher, oived amiti. You can be an oived, not be amiti, not be yasher. And you can be yasher. And by the way, Breishis is called Sefer HaYeshorim, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, which I want to get to the Avos here. This is what I want to talk about today. Sefer HaYeshorim, there was something about Avram Avinu that it was a Yasher. He had every reason in the world to believe in Avodah Zarah. Why should he separate from his family's house? Why should he get thrown into furnaces? Why should he have to go against everybody? Just let me live in peace. So you worship Avodah Zarah. It's so easy to rationalize, even, look, this is the way I grew up. This is what my father said, The Lech Lecha was, let's get down to the real Yashrus, the real Emes, and the godless of Avram Avinu was Echad Haya Avram, that he took the whole world on, and not only took the world on, he took himself on too. He took every reason that he should be doing something. This is very important in our decision-making processes, whether it's in Avodas Hashem or whether it's just doing the right thing, or the decisions that we make. So my father, in his simple way, used to say, when somebody says to you 3 times, it's not the money, then you know it's the money. Emes, I live, but it's what kind of milchama are you going through? It's not the money, it's not the money. Or, whatever a sentence starts with, I'm not concerned about my covet, but. We understand what's really the essence. So listen to the opening line, and you'll see what's really going on over here. So now he's saying as follows: V'zu ha'isa gam kein kol inyan avodasim shel ha'avos. Remember, I just said the avos, Sefer Breishis, Sefer HaYashar, Sefer HaYeshorim. The Ramban calls it. So he says, what was the avodah of the avos? Chol tzadikim harishonim, and all of the original tzadikim, shekaimu es haTorah koidem nesinasa, that kept the Torah even before it was given. Everybody knows Avram Avinu Mekayim es kol haTorah kula ad shaloi nisna. Before it was even given, he kept the Torah, because I'll say that his kloyos, somehow his kidneys, which is the makam of bina, were somehow teaching him the Torah. I think, by the way, the diuk there is that kloyos, your kidneys, are the part of you which filters the good from the bad, the waste from the. I think that's what kloyos do, right? Pretty much, right? So, like, why were his kloyos teaching him Torah? Because so much information is thrown at you in this world and in the world of Avraham Avinu and in our world, right? The whole internet's out there, and now you need your kloyos to do some work. And sometimes, like, it doesn't work. You go to somebody who does dialysis on your brain. So let's you're not able to distinguish between waste and goods. The dialysis of the brain, a new treatment that I will make up right now. So the Avos were being taught Torah by their kloyos, meaning there's so much information. Let's see, Avraham Avinu says, let's see if I can tap into a higher form of information that and there's so much coming at me. And by the way, Avodah Zarah is very, very spiritual. It's not that, like, I'm not going to go with my taivos. It was very, very spiritual. But let me, I should have said I don't want to get political here, but I'm just giving a mashal, that's all. But I speak often about people who go to healers, energy healers. So I think it's Keneged Halacha. My own personal opinion is it's Keneged Halacha, energy healing, not pito. Like it's Keneged the Rambam, it's Keneged. But person comes and asks a shaila. What's driving them is two things. Number one is they want to feel better. So if it works, it works. And number two, it's very spiritual. Because if you consider the fact that I'm not taking a pill, he's not even touching me, the healer. He's just having some kind of kavanas and transference of energy. And it's a very spiritual thing. It proves, in a way, that there's a spiritual aspect to life. And it's not everything is science. It has that beautiful element to it. So people actually turn it into a big mitzvah. Like, the doctors are wrong. Like the doctors are often wrong. I'm not saying that. And I'm also not saying that doesn't work. I'm just saying the Torah gives gedarim of what you're allowed to do. But they'll come up with a million different, the Gedolim said this and the Gedolim said, a million different things which are not true in order to make this true. You understand? Like in order for it to work for them. And that's what's asur. So when you talk about the avos, so says Rabbi Chaim Lashon, v'zu haisagam inyan avodasim shel avos. Let's understand the avodah of the avos. V'chol hatzadikim harishonim shekaimu es haTorah kodim shenitna, kodim nesinasa. You see the pasuk says by Noach already. Mina behema tahira, mina behema sher einena tahira. How did he know which was a behema tahira? It wasn't given until Parsha Shmini. We're still in Parsha Noach. How did he know which was a kosher animal, which was not a kosher animal? He had some kind of kloyos told him. His kloyos told him. I mean, from the moment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is machadish that there's such a thing as behema tahira, behema tmeya, okay, I have to think about that. And Noach accessed his Ruach HaKodesh to say lions 2, cows 7. You have to do that. V'amru, it says in Yom Chavches, Kiyem Avraham Avinu es kol haTorah. Avraham Avinu is Mekayim the whole Torah. V'chein Yisem B'Bereishis Rabbah, Parsha Tzadik Beis, B'Midbar Rabbah, Parsha Yadalit, B'Tanchuma, Bahara, B'Medrash Tilim, Mizmor Aleph. Avram Avinu and the Avos we have over and over again, even Adam Arishon was Mekayim kol haTorah. Now, let's understand that it's not that they had a din that they have to keep the Torah. There was no din of Erev Tchumin for Avram Avinu or Yaakov. Dim Cain, because if there was a din, so they would have never taken the matter into their own hands. He explains, they would never take matters into their own hands. The law is a law. Even if they understood intuitively and instinctively that they need to change something. Yaakov Avinu would have never married 2 sisters, Rachel and Leah. This is a deraisa. So what we have here is a kasha and a teretz and a hesber. The kasha is, if Yaakov Avinu kept the whole Torah, if that's true, as it says in all these Barba Koibas that he brought us, so why did he marry two sisters? That's like a big one. Marry two sisters. Not a lot of married two. You can't marry sisters, two sisters. Okay, but we just said he keeps the whole Torah. Okay, but here he figured I should make an exception. Many cases, if Avram Avinu kept the whole Torah, so why did Hashem have to tell him to do a bris milah? Should have had one already. Keeping the whole Torah. Why did he give the malachim basar v'cholav? Vayikach cholav v'chema uben habokar. And he gave it to the malachim. You wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. Those who keep the Torah from Jews don't do it. Avram Avinu did it. Kept the Torah. Kasha. The Mefarshim asked the Kasha. Yitzchak said to Esav, "Go out, shecht me some food. Bring it. What food? Would you eat from the shechita of Esav? Right? Hashkachas, Esav. Who's going to eat from the hashkach of Esav? Yitzchak. Yitzchak says, "Go, take Yaakov with you. He'll be the mashkiach." Yeah. Nothing. Go out, find an animal. Was it a kosher animal? Maybe he shechted a lion. He brought to Lobo, or he had a sakin of shechita, or he shot it with a bow and arrow. I mean, what was going on over there? And all the Mefarshim kochzich. In my notes, the Marit al-Ghazi in Bechoros, which was a beautiful pirush on Masechta Bechoros, pages about every case that the Avos did not keep the Torah. I would say more often than not. Where do we find already that they kept the Torah? So, I'm going to give you a one-word answer. They weren't Jews. We're Jews. They kept the Torah. In the words of Nefesh Hachaim, there was no din. They were using the Torah, let's say it as they had a nevuah of the Ratzon Hashem, and they used it as a guidebook to make tikkunim and do what they had to do in this world to make the world a makam of a dir of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there were no dinim, there was no chiyuvim, it was just something that was miskala to the avos. Like Goyim, Christians can do this till today. Are they on a higher madrega? I'm not a higher madrega, it's a different thing. Except for the Shabbat mitzvahs b'nei Noach, Goyim can do what they think is correct to be Oved as Hashem. That's why Tosfos says even Yoshka is not a problem. If they feel that's a way to be Oved as Hashem, go for it. It's Tosfos holds, Rabbi Natam. Rabbi Natam. That's Tosfos. It's like, it's not like, okay, they have a heter because you're a guy. It's a heter, not mitzvah and shita. There's no, you be Oved as Hashem. That's what you should do. You don't be Oved Avodah Zarah, because that's one of the Zayin mitzvahs in Einoich. You be Oved as Hashem. Do what you need to do to make the world better, to do lefi your seichel. So it's good for Christians. It's okay for Christians. No need to stop them from doing that. No need to stand on the street corners and try to talk them out of Christianity. There's no point. Just don't try to convert us. And if you're Jewish, you don't have the option. No, I'm going to just to illustrate the point. I'm going to once tell you a story that told again. That years and years ago, I was invited to the University of Buffalo to speak by the Hillel director to speak about Orthodox Judaism. So I prepared myself. Of course, I'll go to speak to a group in Hillel. It wasn't just Hillel; it was like a big crowd, a few hundred people. Speak about Orthodox Judaism. I prepared myself. Little did I realize that it wasn't just me speaking about Orthodox Judaism. There was a conservative rabbi speaking about conservative Judaism, and a reform rabbi speaking about reform. We were sitting at a panel, and each one, the guy, the Hillel director, got up. He says, "Okay, we have the three rabbis here, and everyone's going to speak for 15 minutes about their what they believe, and explain it, and then they'll be open for questions. I would have never participated in this type of a panel, but I'm there. I didn't know. They just asked me to speak. I didn't ask who else is being. I'm not the type. So I don't know. Like, I'm looking around for the Roman Catholic priest. Like what's the? So I want to just point out, like in a minute. The MC was concerned with what order to go in, because he didn't want it to be Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, or Reform. So he went in order of age. I was the youngest. The Reform rabbi was the oldest. So the Reform rabbi, nice fellow. His name was Golem. Golem. That was the name.
He was from Prague? He was from Prague?
A Prager. Happened to be a nice fellow. But nice fellow, nice guy. Did a lot of chesed with people. But he opened up his speech. I actually had never heard, but he opened up his 15 minutes by saying, in Judaism they say, "Es ist schwer zu sein a Yid." He says, I say, "Es ist schwer zu sein a reformischer Yid." Very difficult to be a Reformed Jew. And I'm thinking to myself, I was 21, 22 years old, I'm thinking to myself, what's the difficulty? You have to decide if you want to eat Burger King or Pizza Hut today. Like, what exactly is the difficulty of the Yiddishkeit? Or do whatever you want. So do whatever you want. What's difficult about that? Oh, so he's alumnus. Be Shlomo, you're an Orthodox Jew, and you have rules, and you have a Torah, and you have a Shulchan Aruch, and this is what I do, and this is what I don't do, this is what I eat, this is what I don't eat, this is what I say, this is what I don't say. You're a Shomer Torah mitzvahs. Ashreichem, he looks at me, Ashreichem. But there's no decisions you have to make on a minute-by-minute basis. You just decided one thing, to be an Orthodox Jew. You're keeping Torah mitzvahs, tell me what the halach is, and I'll do it. Whatever the rabbi says, I'll do it. That's easy. He says, with us, you've got to figure out, is kashrut right for our family? Well, it's more expensive on the one hand, it's cleaner on the other hand, it's more healthy on the other hand, it's good for the economy, it's bad for the economy. God, maybe, Torah, maybe, that's also a consideration. Very difficult. Every time you want to eat, you have to make a whole lumdus. And he says, and the difficulty of this is, he said, that there's such a thing as a yetzer hara. And you might say, no, I decided to eat bacon and eggs for breakfast. That's the correct decision. But how do you know it's not your yetzer hara telling you you just like yetzer hara, you just like bacon and eggs? And all of a sudden, I'm listening to like the Alter from Kelm. Like whoa, I just tell you, he spoke maybe for 5 minutes, and I remember till today. The conservative rabbi went over his time by about a half an hour. And I can't remember a word of what he said. It was just gedreht, like nothing to say. And I spoke for 5 minutes, and it made a lot of sense too. But what either you keep halacha or you don't keep halacha. That was the vikuach, and the conservative rabbi just basically became unimportant in the whole conversation. And the students that were there, they hopped this. What the point is this, that for this Reform rabbi, he's right, except that it was he's still holding in a madrega of kodemat and Torah. That's the problem here. He's holding in a madrega of kodemat and Torah. It's you have to realize that it's when Hashem gave the Torah at Sinai, things changed, and I want to explain this. This is exactly what I want to explain. But when Hashem gave the Torah at Sinai, things changed. But kodemat and Torah, beseder. So like a guy that keeps Zayin mitzvahs b'nei Noach, don't go too far off, but then do whatever you think is correct for avodas Hashem, assuming that the kavanah is tahar and it's avodas Hashem. But that was the shita of kodemat and Torah. So I gave a mashal like this. Let's say you have a piece of land, a farm, which is 500 acres wide, and you've got roads and you've got things, and you don't need a license plate on your car, when you're driving in your own property. That's Allah, at least in America. You don't need a license plate. You could drive around your Jeeps and your tractors and everything. You don't have to be registered as long as you don't go off your property. So let's say I have a 7-year-old kid. I give him the keys to the car. I give him the keys to the tractor. Drive. Okay, is that smart? Is it stupid? It's stupid. Is it against the law? It's not against the law. So normally you don't do it. My kloyos are telling me don't give the kid a key to the car. It's a dangerous thing to do. He's going to kill all the dogs and stuff like that. What are you giving him the key to the car? That's what my kloyos are telling me. But sometimes my kidneys will tell me that, you know what, this kid has got to learn a lesson. And it's worth it for me to give him the keys to the car and let him go out of control for I make some kind of a crazy cheshbon, which might be a good cheshbon. So it could be acceptable. I'm the kid's parent, it's my car, it's my kid. Somehow it could be more acceptable. However, once you get out into the street, there's a law here. There are laws. There's a social contract which says that we have to listen to the Chukei Hamedina. There is traffic police. This is no longer a good idea. It's the law. And once it's the law, you can make all the cheshbonos in the world. You will get arrested or fined or ticketed. It's not going to work. These cheshbonos you make on your own property. You can't make these cheshbonos outside, right? I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if anything I just said is true. I'm just saying that, like in Al Pi Svari, you can understand it. The Avos were on their own property. There was no Torah. When you ask the question, how did Yaakov marry 2 sisters? Well, it's very interesting. I was looking this morning. The Briskerov answers. How did Yaakov marry 2 sisters? Easy. There was no such thing as marriage. He never married 2 sisters. Marriage came about, says the Briskerov, with Matan Torah. How did Amram marry his aunt? These are the 2 examples that Rabbi Chaim was. Easy. There was no such thing as marriage. He didn't marry his aunt. He didn't marry 2 sisters because there was no. Where did marriage? Rabbi says this first. Koydem Matan Torah hayaya adam isha bashuk. He liked her and he brought her home. That Rambam is not so much different than Rivka passes by Yitzchak. Yitzchak sees her. She falls off her animal. Yitzchak sees her. Vayavia ha'oihela. He brings her into his tent. Vayavaya, and he buries her. He loves her. No kedushin, no marriage. So Briskerov says easy. How did Yaakov Avinu marry 2 sisters? He didn't. There was no ishus per se. Why didn't Yaakov Avinu do a bris milah? It's not just Briskerov. Because who said there was such a thing as an orla? What is he supposed to do? The orla wasn't invented yet. So Briskerov says. So it's a typical Brisker art which makes perfect sense and no sense at all. Because it makes perfect sense logically, in the sense, okay, there's no orla yet, but he kept the whole Torah. Avraham Avinu kept the whole Torah, so if he kept the whole Torah, so then there was an orla, right? So how are you miyashiv these 2 things? And the answer is that I believe this is what he's saying here. The answer to all of these kashas, there's svarim written about it. I actually wrote one. I have a sefer that I wrote called Rabbi Yosef Engel al Torah, and I'd say half of the sefer is dedicated to this Avera that the Avos did, and that Avera that the Avos did. How were they able to do it? With all kinds of lumdishe answers. Not mine, but I was malakid. The simple pshat is that they were allowed to do whatever they wanted. They kept the whole Torah means something different. They kept the whole Torah meaning that they understood that with their nevuah and with their ruach hakodesh, they received a guidance which told them, you know what, this is a behemoth tahira and this is a behemoth tmeya, like Noach received. Now, what should I do about that? B'derech klal, I'll keep it. But if, let's say, I see that there's, b'derech klal, I'm not going to give my kid the keys to the car, but let's say I see in this domain that I'm going to create Yud Beis Shiftei Yisrael, which are going to make a tikkun and bring the Geula into this world. Okay, then I understand I'm on a level. I don't mean I'm on a level, but in other words, I'm working on a level which that is permissible because the whole thing is tikkun olamos anyway. So before Matan Torah. So what he's saying is that zuhi avodas shel avos v'atzadikim harishonim. The derech of the avos and the tzadikim rishonim was that they understood that it was all about making tikkunim in the olamos. So if it works, it works, and if it doesn't work, let's give it a new name now, they'll do an Avera L'shema. They'll do an Avera L'shema. In this case, it's worth breaking the rule. It's worth breaking the standard rule.
Did Chazal ever refer to like marrying two sisters as an Avera L'shema?
I'll show you. Good question. But it's a big chiddush to say it's an Avera L'shema. But it's an Avera L'shema in the sense, in the way I'm going to explain Avera L'shema.
Was the question on the Avera or the Lishma?
L'shema for sure it was, because they wanted to be Misak and Elamais. It wasn't an Avera. So the Brisker Rav says it wasn't an Avera. Who said it was an Avera? There was her marriage. There was no such thing as marriage. What happened, here's my question. What happened in Matan Torah? So you can look at it like this. You could say Matan Torah, you could say, okay, listen, you're out of your private property, you're on the streets now. Get yourself a license. Or you could say, there's another thing that happened here, and that is that Sof Kol Sof, the Avos, the Tzadikim Rishonim, everybody embraces. They were individuals. They were Masake Noilam U'Malchus Shakai. Once we were in Mitzrayim, we came out of Mitzrayim. At that moment, we became a people. A people, that's the big paradigm shift. We stood at Har Sinai as a people. Why didn't Hashem give the Torah to Avram Avinu already? So we became a people. A people has a different set of tikkunim to make. You could say simply, well, now it's not for us to break the laws, whatever. Also true, but it's a different paradigm. Once you're an ummah, it's a different paradigm. Like there's no more. Like in the beginning of this country, not even the beginning, like between even 20 years, there were squatting laws. You're allowed to go to a piece of property and lift and squat, and that's my piece of property. Go do me something. And now, here we are, 70 years into it. They're taking all these pieces of property away from everybody. What happened to the squatting laws? Okay, we're a country. You can't have such a hefkerus. If we're going to let you be there, then Jews, Arabs, it becomes like a complicated. There has to be rules, there has to be gedarim, there has to be laws, or even more, Hashem invented idea of marriage. That we thought that the only way you could be related to somebody was if he's your brother, he's your sister, he's your father, he's your mother. No, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is machadish, something that didn't even exist before. Somehow at this period in history when we became an ummah, Kadosh Baruch Hu, there's another way to be married to somebody. There's another way to bring it, and that is to marry them. It's another way to connect neshamas or to be related to someone. Marriage, chiddush. So Kodim Matan Torah says the Rambam. I'm really echoing the Brisker Rav. I'm just giving a hesber to it. Kodim Matan Torah, there was no such thing. Maybe there was such a thing as behema tameya, behema tahara, like Noach knew. But maybe who said there was such a thing as shchita? So Esav did the shchita. Maybe he said, Asher Ohav Nafshi, bring us a tzayid, Asher Ohav Nafshi. He meant, don't bring me a lion. Shchita, it could be that these were things that were nischadesh to the ummah that weren't nischadesh to the individuals. The nakuda is that before Matan Torah, it was only, and this is what he's saying, it was only about tikkun elamas. After Matan Torah, it's about existing as a people. Existing as a people, there has to be rules. Like if somebody 100 years ago wanted to do the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, come to Eretz Yisrael, and it's the Wild West. Now you want to come to Eretz Yisrael and do the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, it's organized, supposedly. There's a mahalach here. You can't just do whatever you want to do. So if you want to exist as a country, that's a new mahus. It's something new. You want to exist as a people, that's something different than and our job became different. We're being masak in the olam in a different way. So if that, and that, by the way, what I'm saying now, if you get me, answers all the kashas. Close all the svarim about Kodim Matan Torah, how they do this, how they do that, how they do this. They can do whatever they wanted, basically, because there was no contract to do anything. It was all about tikkun olamos with their kloyos. So the kloyos hilamdenu, their kidneys were separating the good from the bad. And in this case, if you have very, very sophisticated kloyos, and good from bad has a different definition. So Avram Avinu's kloyos told him, Yaakov Avinu's kloyos told him, marry two sisters. This is what's good for me, because this is the advice. It's Is it logical? I mean, why is any of this stuff logical? You see, we say light cohabited with his daughters. Yuck. I mean, who said there was anything wrong with that? Am I being provocative here? Who said there was anything wrong with it? You're mine.
No, they did.
We're judging it.
That's not a riot, or just adultery?
I can't hear everybody. I'm sorry, what?
It's either in the laws or it's in your mind.
Okay. And it was neither here.
Oh, but it's clear.
It was neither.
It's very clear. It's very clear from the parsha that the girls themselves felt that they were doing something problematic. They felt that they had to intoxicate their father. But they felt that they were
Because
doing
he was Ba'avelus.
But they felt that
They felt that he wasn't in the mood. His wife just died. He's Ishtoishal, like his wife just died. But I don't know. I mean, in other words, you can from there came David Amel, from there came Mashiach. It's a kupa shel shratzim. Is it a davar shel maguna in history? Yes, no question that it's maguna in history because we have the Torah. That's our mind and that's the law. But I don't know. I don't necessarily know. Even in the psukim, and I looked at the psukim as recently as this morning, there's an emphasis on the fact that they did some kind of a terrible wrongdoing. I don't know it's true. So let me just read you this because the time's up. Let me just the Vilna Gaon. This is the title. This is in the some Sidurim is called the Keser Rosh. Some places called the Shiltus. Questions that Reb Chaim Volozhin, asked his Rabbi the Gra. Avera L'shema. This is the title. Avera L'shema. Now, I'm sorry, I'm just going off Thursday to go over a couple minutes if you don't mind. But Avera L'shema, the Gemara says, Gadol Avera L'shema mi mitzvah shalai L'shema. First Gemara. That Avera L'shema, it's better to do an Avera L'shema than a mitzvah shalai L'shema. So understand, obviously neither one of them is good. I mean, the best thing to do is a mitzvah L'shema. But if you have a choice to do between Avera L'shema and mitzvah shalai L'shema, go for the Avera L'shema. What it really means is, just in the touch of it, is that every Maisa you do has the Maisa that you're doing, and it has the L'shema, the Kavanah of it. So now, if I do a mitzvah L'shema, bingo, I got my mitzvah with the right Kavanah, I'm doing good deed with good Kavanah. If I do Avera L'shema, I'm doing bad Maisa, good Kavanah. If I do mitzvah Shalai L'shema, I do good Maisa, bad Kavanah. So what the Gemara is really asking, what's more important, really, the Kavanah or the Maisa? That's really the Gemara's question. The Gemara says, Gadol Avera L'shema mitzvah Shalai L'shema. Better if you do things with the right intention, even if your Maisa is bad, than to do things with the wrong intention and your Maisa's good intention is strong. There's a tremendous chiddush that the Gemara is saying, and there's a tremendous chiddush in Pshat in the Gemara. But Gadol Avera L'shema mitzvah L'shema, go for the L'shema. Your Kavanah is more important than your actual Maisa.
If there's a tikkun.
Well, L'shema.
It could be conditional.
L'shema. So L'shema, that's what L'shema means. Avera L'shema, says the Gaon, Leihuter mizman matan Torah klum. There is no such thing. From the time of Matan Torah, there is no such thing. Now he knows, like I know, that the Gemara was talking about after Matan Torah. Yoel Eishus, okay, it was after Matan Torah, right? Leihuter mizman matan Torah klum. Lahayuduim, because if you're knowledgeable, meaning if you're a makubal, Amar Shakol Avera L'shema, you can do anything you want. I'm making a tikkun. Right? I'm making a tikkun. Amar said the Gra, Im Kain Kol Atareg Mitzvahs, what do we need all the mitzvahs to do? Make a simple cheshbon. Am I going L'shema or am I not going L'shema? Very simple. Masha L'shema Yasa, Masha Lo L'shema La Yasa. Afilu mitzvahs. If it's a mitzvah Shelo L'shema, don't do it. So forget about L'shema, he says. U'b'emes Amar Acher Matan Torah and Lazuz Mikol Torah Mitzvahs Divrei Chazal. Shloi Lishoyin Al Das HaYetzer. And here's the problem. The problem is that one of the things that happened is that Koydem Matan Torah, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, when they said Lishma, they were really Lishma. Ish HaYashar Ba'oived HaMiti. That's the beginning of this paragraph here. Yashar, Sefer HaYasharim. The Yashrus of Yaakov Avinu was that he was Lishma. If we would marry two sisters, we can make all kinds of, cheshbonis. But the fact of the matter is, we just, we just feel like marrying two sisters. Like that's, you can make Kabbalistic cheshbonis maybe, but we know what's driving us, and maybe I'm Lishma, maybe I'm not Lishma. who can say that they're 100% L'shma and doing an Avera? So the Gra says, no more Avera L'shma. You see, the Gemara says that in Shushan Habira, when the Persians gave their Nazi decree that all the Jews have to be killed, Vayizak Za'aka Gedolo Mara Moed. Everybody gave out a scream, oy, 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 like that's it, we're living so nicely here in Shushan and they're going to kill us all, right? Holocaust. They're going to kill us all. Chazal say, interesting that the same lashon appears by Esav when he found out that he didn't get the brachas and Yaakov took the brachas. By Yitzhak Zaka Gedolah Umar Moed was interesting lashon that's the same. So that it says, Chazal say that when Yaakov heard Esav scream that he didn't get the brachas, he gave a little smile. Didon Natzach, right? I succeeded. I got the brachas, he didn't get the brachas. For that smile, the whole Jewry had to scream. Esav screamed. What's the pshat? The pshat is that Yaakov was 100% l'shma in taking Esav's clothing, in lying, in the whole business was wrong. Avera L'shema, but there was one part of it that was not necessary. You didn't have to smile. That didn't make any tikkunim in Shemayim that you smiled. What are you being masameach that your brother is suffering? And for that one piece of the whole story, the unknown piece of the whole story, the whole Judaism had to suffer. So you're talking about, us doing Avera L'shema. Who knows? It's a nuclear decision. I meant well. It's a nuclear decision because you don't know how that's going to come out. So says the Goyen that for us, al tishayin al dasa yetzer, you don't know, you don't know that you're doing it 100%, right? What Yaakov Avinu married two sisters, he says before, V'im Yaakov lokach beis achiyos, under the title Avera L'shema. Im Yaakov lokach beis achiyos va'amram nasa doidasai zahaya koydem matan Torah. Avo meish shekibel Moshe HaTorah misinai. Even though you understand, and I think that these four words, bring us closer to what the machlokes they were talking about. Tikkun nishmasai. I know this is right for my neshama. I know it's right for my neshama. I can't tell you not one, not two, not three people have told me that they should marry a certain non-Jew because it's the right thing for their neshama. They just feel it. She's also blonde. There's a lot of pieces to this, but they feel this is the right thing for the child. How can you be so sure that this is the right thing for your neshama? Even if you're a makubal. And makubalim sometimes do very weird things. Kal v'chomer anu shasog yerseinu hakol hevel, ashkafosenu gam ken hevel. The Gemara says, the guy knew the Gemara. The Gemara says, Mashamru Chazal Gedola Avera L'shema, that sometimes you have to do an Avera L'shema. Exceptions to the rule. K'may Yoel Eshes Chaver. Hatzalas Klal Yisrael. There's a whole different story. Hatzalas Klal Yisrael. Esther, why did she marry Achashverosh? Hatzalas Klal Yisrael. It's a different story. She was willing to go to Gehenna, maybe. I don't know if I doubt if she did, but if she was willing to go to Gehenna for Hatzalas Klal Yisrael, I'm willing to marry Achashverosh and give birth to Daryavish. So what we're talking about over here, it's so murdic that don't make the cheshbonis of Tikkun Nishmasai, now that the Torah was given, make one cheshbon. That's to do the halacha. What should be my kavana is that by doing the mitzvah, by doing the halacha, I'm being misaken elamis. Forget about Tikkun Nishmasai. I'm doing the Ratzon Hashem, and that's the best thing for the world. Trust God. And that's what happened when we became an ummah. When we became a people, we signed this type of a social contract, which tells us that it's kedai to go against your lishma, either because the Goyen says it's because who knows if your Yitzhahar is going to, or the whole thing changed, paradigm shift. Okacha. But that's the avoida of the avos that we learned for. Sof kol sof, everything was l'tzarech gavoya.
It's like on Sunday.